Alex, hello. Thanks so much for joining me today. A little bit of a fangirl, but I'm going to try and keep that under wraps.
My heart swell. Thank you for having me.
So for those of you that don't, haven't met you, haven't come across you before, you're a talented and award-winning VR director, drums, 50 under 30, TEDx speaker, podcast extraordinaire, the list goes on. Maybe you'd like to just tell us a little bit about kind of yourself and your background.
I love it. Nothing sets me up more for like a failure to introduce myself and the listicle of awards that I've accrued.
More, but I didn't have the time to,
So I'm Alex Rühl. I am primarily a virtual reality director, writer, exec producer. Primarily, I work in narrative-driven virtual reality. So I'm really, really looking at the immersive storytelling space. Now, that can be in terms of, original dystopian drama, or that could be using scenario-based training, for example, for like unconscious bias training, or scenarios like cybersecurity attacks, or, anywhere where an enterprise might benefit from putting someone into a drama-based scenario, a reenactment, a role-playing situation. So my kind of career kind of spans the last few years, I guess, in virtual reality specifically, but before then I was in television. So I've always come to the virtual reality space with that kind of entertainment, narrative-driven kind of head-on. And then outside of that, I do a lot of work in educating people in VR, creatives, but also businesses, and teaching them what it can be used for. More recently kind of moved into the podcasting space, as you mentioned, which I absolutely love. And it never ceases to amaze me how I can record a really simple 15-minute rant to my iPhone, upload it, and it reached thousands of people. And yet with virtual reality, it's so the opposite. It's planning and working out how to distribute and showcase a VR piece that might reach maybe 30 people, which can have a much bigger impact, obviously, but it's a totally different facet to the kind of creative side of my job.
The one thing that really comes across is that innate passion for the skill, the kind of immersive tech for VR, for it seems to be something that you've got endless enthusiasm for. Where did you first start kind of touching into kind of more VR from 2D perhaps, or kind of traditional filmmaking?
Yeah, I think it's funny you say that, because I've been in this space now for probably collectively about 5 going on 6 years now, but primarily, just focused on VR specifically for the last 3. It's funny to me, I feel like my passion is constantly going through these fits and starts of like, oh my God, I'm so into it. And then going through is this ever going to take off? But funnily enough, every time I do talk to someone about it, and every time I talk to someone that doesn't know what virtual reality is, it kind of reminds me why I got started in this industry. So, like I mentioned, I was in television before, and around that time was when someone first put me in a VR headset, and the piece that I watched was a piece that was really simple, just watching a Cirque du Soleil performance, but in a headset. Being in the middle of a Cirque du Soleil performance became this wild experience. And in my TED talk, I kind of which, by the way, is not a sentence that I say lightly, because I do realize what a ridiculous sentence that is. In my TED talk, I talk about that experience and actually physically like shuddering, like when a performer got close to me. And I remember that being the first time that I was like, what is this technology? Like, this isn't just a storytelling medium or like an experience that is just novel. This is actually something where it's like, what has happened in my brain that has made me believe that this character, this actor, was actually going to kind of come a bit too close to me? It kind of reminds me of the tales. Yeah, exactly. So real that I actually believed it and almost banged my head on the wall trying to get out of the way of this clearly pre-recorded character. But that in itself fascinated me. And I was like, I'm obsessed with this. I want to know everything about it. How did they make this? You know, how did they even, what camera were they using to even like capture this performance? All of these questions kind of came up. And because I'd been working in television for a little while, it was almost like this new stimulus that I was like, wow, like, this has never been done before. And when I Google it, no one seems to know anything about it. So for me, that was so exciting to be like, there's this really unexplored medium that has clearly so much potential. And already just from that first kind of use of VR, I was like, just imagine what this would mean for, you know, like my grandma who like can't get out of her chair, bless her, or like for my younger self who, you know, couldn't go on school trips and could now potentially like feel like I was in all of these like ancient places. Imagine like what that would mean for education, or you know, all of these different avenues. So that's kind of where my passion like started. And like I say, that passion does continue to go through, even though throughout the years, you know, as an industry, we've had lots of kind of fits and starts. And yeah, that's kind of, I guess, like where my passion comes from, is reminding myself that actually the potential of this technology, it might be a slow burn, it might take us a while to get there, but the use cases are endless.
How do you think this year is going to kind of unfold in the adoption or understanding of VR and immersive tech?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because, like you say, it's usually someone's first experience with VR is through someone saying, try this,
Yeah.
or taking it, like I'm notorious for like bringing my VR headset to my, you know, when I meet up with friends, or when like I go to a cocktail party or something.
Remember that? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
For those days where, you know, actual social lives. And that was usually the way that people would experience VR for the first time, because of course, like no one's really, unless you're really into gaming and there is an obvious use case for it, no one's really going to be splashing out 300 quid on something that they have no idea really what they could use it for.
Yeah.
Whereas having that first case scenario with someone, especially like us, who know what VR is and can say, this experience is going to really blow your socks off, and you don't need to worry about the user intuitiveness, you don't need to worry about knowing how the controllers work, or the fact that it's a totally new way of interfacing with a technology, because I'm here and I'm going to guide you through that. And that is so radically important for the adoption of VR. And like you say, during this time, it's really weird because we can't have those experiences. So for me, I feel equally excited about the fact that more people than ever now know how important it is that we have these extended realities, as you say. We have these digital alternatives that can enhance our real lives, that make it possible to be with someone when we can't physically be with them. But at the same time, we're lacking those opportunities to have those first VR experiences. Now, don't get me wrong, I feel like that they'll come back, and when we're allowed out again and we're allowed to socialize, maybe we will have, you know, these pop-up VR events, and we'll be able to take our VR headsets around our friends' homes again, and maybe, you know, maybe we'll have like a rapid acceleration of adoption then. But until then, it feels like a quite frustrating time, especially as a creative, because it's like all you want to do is create and have your piece, you know, impact people. But the fact is, it would be a bit like, you know, a film creative back before they could upload to YouTube. Like, you make this piece and then you're just kind of like waiting with bated breath until you can actually show it. So yeah, difficult times.
Yes, it's kind of interesting, the scale there around kind of the need and the ability and the kind of the desire to connect with people that, you know, immersive realities can help us do in a digital way that does feel real, like that circus performance coming directly for you. A consideration, all these things that we, you know, need to think about as content creators, because the benefits are that the content is so much more immersive, and that led me to thinking about the applications around education and that immersion, and how that can help, you know, really drive home thoughts, you know, kind of our learning ability in the education environment, but also the training environment as well. And I wonder if you have got any thoughts on the benefits and where VR can take us in that space, something that potentially, you know, that the enterprises in the business and certainly kind of education, schools, institutions are going to want to have a focus on when we get out of, you know, lockdown, is getting people back to the level or beyond the level of education training that they were at before, and how, you know, VR can help with that.
Oh, absolutely. Like everything you've just said is just so, it's so on point. Those two areas specifically, education and training, are, in my opinion, the biggest opportunity for growth in virtual reality. And I think the reason for that is because eventually, not necessarily right now, but soon, we will have economies of scale with the technology itself, with the hardware. It's going to be cheaper to access the hardware. You know, even in the space of like 3 years, we've gone from a headset that would cost you £1,000 plus the computer you would have to run it on, and you would have to hook up all these sensors. We've gone from that to now this, what, like, is it like £300, £200, the Quest 2? And now that essentially, yeah, it's like, you know, that is essentially the same quality, and you don't need any computer. It has the kind of, you know, the power to be able to power itself, and you don't need the sensors hooked up because it got inside out tracking. It's mad to see just what's happened in the last few years. So when we get even further down that rabbit hole, when it becomes even cheaper, maybe when, I don't know, maybe when we get something that hooks up directly to your, you know, maybe it's like wirelessly syncing to your smartphone, or it's, you know, powered by 5G or something, where it would be so small and so cost effective that all of a sudden it becomes a no-brainer for the likes of schools, you know, in the education sector, and enterprises focusing on training to employ that, because the statistics around people's engagement levels, retention of information in virtual reality is staggering. Like, you only have to look at the reports by PwC, who have looked extensively into this, and you see, you know, 274% more likely to retain the information, or I'm trying to think some of the other stats off the top of my head, but they're more likely to stay engaged with it. Of course they are, because they can't be on their phone whilst they're in VR. They're, you know, they're in that scenario. I'll never forget, this is like an example I use all the time, but I think it's so powerful that it just so obviously illustrates the benefits of VR, especially in the training sector. Is Walmart, who are obviously a massive conglomerate, I guess, over in America. They're massive into VR training, and so much so they bought like thousands of Oculus headsets and sent them across all of their stores in America. And in El Paso, when there was like a shooter in store, the CEO said that because so many employees had been through the virtual reality training of what to expect and how to react in that tragic situation, it actually saved lives.
Yeah.
Like, what other, you know, what, you probably wouldn't have got that same first-hand experience, and you probably wouldn't have you know, retained that kind of muscle memory of like what to do in that situation if it wasn't in VR, because VR goes from just watching something, just consuming something mindlessly, to actually kind of your brain internalizing it and thinking that you've physically done that thing. You know, there's studies around the way that people describe doing VR experiences, and it's not I watched this thing, it's like I did this thing. I did walk along this plank, I did fire someone in soft skills training, I did visit the Colosseum in Rome in my school trip. You know, it's fascinating. So that's on the kind of, I guess, the more training side. For education, like I say, I feel like my vision of like VR adoption does kind of revolve around education. I think that it will take a while, don't get me wrong. Obviously, we've got a lot of issues in the education system, especially here in the UK, where there's other priorities right now. You know, during this, it's been highlighted that schools, you know, need a better digital infrastructure just purely to be able to like educate their students remotely through a normal laptop, let alone let's chuck on, you know, immersive tech on top of that. But in 10 years time, in 20 years time, is it going to be more cost effective and better for the child to be, you know, using immersive tech and learning in the style that is innate to them, because we can use AI to kind of calibrate that actually, you know, for this student, learning about this maths lesson is going to be way better in this kind of environment with these kind of colors, with these kind of modules split up, whereas this child's more of this kind of learner, so let's, you know, let's put them in this environment, let's have, you know, even just silly things like I don't know, is a child gonna learn their ABCs better if a giant talking potato teaches them it? You know, you can do that stuff with immersive tech.
I'm willing to try. Let's do it.
Even as adults, we're, you know, I'm 100% into that. So I think like what it will do is it will allow personalization. It will allow, you know, much more kind of intentional education, like an individual kind of education for the kids, but let alone the fact that it's expensive to run schools and have people be there in person. Now there would be this alternative. I'm not suggesting that all kids would just be at home all the time, a la, you know, Ready Player One style, but would it be amazing that when you do your homework, you can pop on this thing and have this personalized lesson? I think, yeah, I mean, the gamification of education through VR is going to be massive, absolutely massive.
I mean, you only have to consider how people learn. Some, you know, through audio, visual, and some by touch, or just actually by doing. And this very much caters for that need of education through experience, and one, you know, that doesn't have to be a purely kind of PE or, you know, life skills kind of physical education. It can, you know, come into play in things like maths and science and English and things like that. So yeah, I do think it is a very, you know, exciting opportunity and use case. So yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, just imagine like when you were learning about like ancient Greece, imagine being able to like have that lesson in ancient Greece, like seeing some of these iconic, you know, I think a massive things will be like, you know, like Horrible Histories on television was like, you know, funny versions of like history stories. Imagine that, but being able to like be there, like seeing these parables play out, learning about the Greek gods by actually like, you know, being in a physical space with them. Like, yeah, I mean, the possibilities are endless.
They are. And I hope for, you know, a lot of our creators and a lot of kind of the clients, you know, working on projects or embarking on their first projects right now, they feel that excitement too, and that hope about kind of, you know, moving things forwards. We've seen a lot in the papers, who reads the papers, in the press, in the, you know, online news around kind of how retail has been hit by, you know, the lack of footfall in the high street, and actually then if you look at kind of some of the positive stories that are coming out around, you know, Estee Lauder's growth or some of the other online pivots that some of these retailers have made into virtual shops, virtual reality, as a way of trying to, you know, replicate that experience that you just don't get from a website, you know, and that is a positive story where, you know, it's the flip side to the kind of the closures and the redundancies that we're seeing as well. So there is some light here that VR and XR is providing.
Yeah, and I think because I think obviously it's sad. Obviously, it's tragic to think about all the people that have lost their jobs and stuff. But what I think this has done is it's just kind of just rapidly accelerated what was already going to happen. Like we were all spending more time at home. We were all switching our buying behaviors to be more e-commerce. And like you say, what's happened now, though, is it's gone so far the other way, because now we don't have the choice to go to a shop, that actually, like for me personally, sometimes the highlight of my day, because we're in a lockdown, is to go to the supermarket. And literally, I will just enjoy walking up and down, like middle of Lidl has become like my version of like Alton Towers. But I feel like exactly what you were saying, like it's bringing that experiential level to something that we can't get from like an e-commerce store or you know a Shopify or Amazon kind of experience. And I think that we will see more of that, even when retail does physically come back, I think what we'll see more physical retail space incorporating these kind of immersive experiential things. Like imagine walking into, I don't know, a Nike store with a pair of AR glasses on and having like, you know, stuff come to life and like seeing the products and like seeing all the information come up, having your favorite celebrity like personal shop with you. Like there's so much opportunity and scope, and it all, like you say, revolves around this idea of like, how do you make it special? How do you make it personalized experience, not just, oh, I need a pair of trainers, so I might as well just get from Amazon because they're, you know, I can compare price really quickly. That's utility. What we're talking about is, how do you add that kind of like experience that people will crave so badly after being locked down for so long?
Absolutely. I sometimes feel like we're living in black and white at the moment, and you know, at some point the color, living in color, is going to come back, and it won't be just about, you know, surviving and getting by, which for, you know, so many people right now it is. It will be about, you know, where can we find a bit of joy, where can we find the pleasure in these activities. And yes, you can, you know, spend the same amount of money on a pair of trainers, but where are you going to get the joy from that beyond that kind of the monetary exchange? And I think that is what we will be looking for, is that kind of added joy that we can get from these experiences, and rewarding the retailers and the brands that provide those for us.
Totally. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, I'm off to buy some trainers.
Yes. Hopefully with your AR filtered experience, you know.
Try on, absolutely. But we should catch up soon, and best of luck with your drama. Can you tell us when it might be coming out, or what to look for?
Oh, well, I'm just actually started to record almost like a mini kind of documenting series for my podcast called Making a VR Drama, which is going to be coming out hopefully weekly, that will document the process of making Bad News, which is the first drama to be commissioned by the BFI network, which is super exciting.
Wow.
When it comes out will totally depend on when we can put VR headsets on the public space again, I guess, because like I say, I'm such a big advocate and a massive believer in that first time VR experience and having that tactile kind of social VR screening. So it probably won't be out anytime soon, but if you want to follow the process, or if you're a creator that's interested in what goes into making a drama, like I say, the Alex Makes VR podcast is I'll be documenting it on there in a mini series.
And I recommend everybody tune in anyway. It's always fascinating. Thanks again, Alex. It's been so brilliant to talk to you, and good luck with all of the filming and the podcasting.
Perfect. Thank you so much.